All right, everybody, welcome back. Today, taking a look at comparing and ordering integers. Remember, integers, these are uh, whole numbers, they're natural numbers. It's a way for us to compare um, distance from zero, how far away they are from zero, which is neutral. So with this one, what we are looking at is we are either comparing integers or we're putting them in order. And we want to read the directions very carefully to make sure we are putting things the way they need to be. When we are comparing, we are going with greater than, less than, and equal to. And then if we get even, more advanced math, you'll see these lines down below. That would just mean greater than, or equal to, or less than, or equal to. But for right now, we're just sticking with greater than, less than. I like to write greater than in red because red, right hand, greater, kind of with that R sounds so greater. And then if you take your left hand and you go thumb and index finger, you make an L and you just twist it a little bit, so that's less than. So when we want to read these, we'll have our term on the left and our term on the right, kind of like this. And we read left to right. So whether, uh, you know, whatever the case may be, we always want to be reading left to right on these. For ordering, we can use a number line to order a set of integers from least to greatest or greatest to least. It all just depends on the question that they're asking for us to do. So on this left side, we'll be focusing only on comparing, while the other side, it'll be ordering. We'll spend a little bit more time comparing because in this lesson, they want us to do a little bit more of comparison. So starting off, there's two different scenarios, and the first one that we're going to focus on is when we have different signs, meaning we have one integer that's positive and one that is negative. Um, for this, it will always be the positive number will always be greater than a negative number. If we're comparing these two, we're not worrying about absolute value or distance from zero. A positive number will always be greater than a negative. Always, always, always. But when we do this, we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make this out of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. -4. And we have -3. -3 will be right here. And we have +2. +2 will be right there. So when we compare these, 2 is greater than -3. And we're done. If we have a same sign, so whether if it's positive, positive, or negative, negative, now it's depending which one is closest. If we're talking about negatives, it's the one that is closest to zero. If it's positive numbers, obviously, whichever number is greater, continuing far right is what's going to be the greater value. So with this one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have -3 and we have -2. And we plot those points there, and -2 is closer to zero than -3. So we would have -2 is greater than -3, and we are done with these. So when we have both negatives, whichever one is the closer to zero is the greater one. All right. So in the first example that I have here, Justin scored has a score of -5 on this trivia game. Desiree's score is -3. So what we have to do is write an inequality to compare the scores and then explain the meaning. So here, write an inequality. So we want to write this in the order that we see it. So -5, I'm going to put a circle there because we're going with either greater than, less than, or equal to. So in this case, we can all agree that -5 is not equal to -3, so we can kind of rule that one out. So what we want to do first is plot our points. So -5 is starting from 0. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll be right there. and then negative 3, 1, 2, 3. Negative 3 will be right there. And so now we're comparing which one is farther to the right, meaning if they're both negative, which one is closer to 0? And by default, negative 3 is in fact closer to 0. So negative 5 is less than negative 3. So which number is farther to the right, or closer in another way, closer to 0? Negative 3 is closer. Continuing on, now this is a little bit later in the lesson. You may have to skip a couple pages over, but when we are talking about comparing absolute value, we understand that if we have as value increases, so is the absolute value. So for example, if I have, 2, or absolute value of 2, that, value is increasing while the absolute value is increasing. If we have a negative, let's say negative 20, right? The absolute value of that, or the total distance from um, 0, is 20. So this is kind of like the weird part where people may get a little confused, is when I have a absolute value and it's a negative inside, I have to remember that it will always be positive. So that is the, as the value of negative 5 we know is decreasing. However, the distance from 0 will always be increasing. So kind of for example here, if John drove 20 feet or dove 20 feet below the ocean surface, Sam dove 30 feet below the ocean surface, who reached a greater depth? So if I go J and S, I draw a little diagram, and I always encourage my students to do a little doodle, something to kind of make sense of what you see. So John dove 20 feet below surface, and so we have negative 20 feet. And Sam dove 30 feet below. So now we're trying to figure out who dove farther. Well, the absolute value of negative 20 is going to be 20. And if we have the negative, or absolute value of negative 30 is 30. So who dove deeper would be Sam. And so that is how we can compare this. And we would have absolute value 20 comparing to the absolute value of negative 30 would be that. Negative absolute value of 20 would be equal to 20, and we know 20 is less than 30, so this is a quick way to double check on how to do that. All right, moving on. When we are comparing, remember, we want to make sure we look over the information, whether they want us to go least to greatest or greatest to least. So if they give us a data set here, we have negative 8, 3, negative 1, 0, and 6. So if I plot these really quick, I have negative 8, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3. So that is 3. And then I have negative 1, and I have 0, and I have 6 right there. So if I kind of want to plot these with letters so I can make this a little bit quicker, A, and then that would be C, that would be D, 3 would be B, and 6 would be E. So now what I want to do is, let's say example, if they want us to go least to greatest, well, I'm just going to write it in the order that I see it here. So I would have negative 8, comma, and then negative 1, comma, 0, 0, comma, 8, oh, sorry, 3, comma, and then 6. And then that's going least to greatest. And if I'm going greatest to least, I just reverse it. I would have 6, comma, 3, comma, 0, comma, -1, and finally -8. And so that is a tool for me to plot the points, and then from there I read and I'm able to organize either least to greatest or greatest to least. So hope this video was helpful, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.